Derbyshire has a long history of industry, of coal, of limestone and of railways. Here at Crich, George Stephenson took over these quarries which had been started in the 1790s by William Jessup and Benjamin Outram, themselves pioneers of the tramway. To Stephenson and his contemporaries, the tramway was for moving minerals, using steam engines, horses and cables.
But by the end of the 19th century, the term had taken on a completely new meaning, with the arrival of the electric street tramway, that feature most typical of every Victorian city. At first, horses provided the power, for small four-wheel, single-deck cars such as this one, built in Britain but in fact used until quite recently in Portugal. Driving an electric tram was hardly more complicated, the left hand controlling current to the motors, the right wielding a massive brake lever. Here, Bob Hall of the Tramway Museum Society lives for trams, working full-time as electrical and mechanical engineer, coach builder, painter, and from time to time driver and conductor too. This Leicester car was rescued from its fate as a chicken house and has been faithfully restored to its original condition. Some 40 trams have been assembled at Crich, representing most of the major systems in Britain, and several from abroad as well.
These workshops which you're in are the original quarry workshops where the wagons were built. We've since modified it to take tram cars. This is Southampton 45, the first car the Society ever acquired. It was built in 1903 as an open-top tram car, but at that time without the canopy over the bulkheads. This was added by Southampton Corporation during a later rebuild. And it ran until 1948. Well, here you can see we've exposed some of the earlier history of the car. On the top here we've left the last coat of paint that we put on. Underneath this was the red coat which Southampton put on when they gave the car to us, and beneath this was the battleship wartime grey, which many of the public service vehicles around the country were painted. Beneath this was a plain coat of cream which was put on about 1936, and we've gone through all these coats to expose the still earlier style of ornate lettering that we wish to copy and trace so that we can accurately reproduce this when the car is completed and painted. Well, as you can see, on vehicles of the day, enclosure was not really considered important as long as you got the passengers to and from work. This was all that was really considered necessary in the way of provisions and comfort. This particular car has knifeboard seating. That is that the passengers sit back to back with their heads almost touching, as opposed to the more standard arrangement on an open-top car of seats rather like the present-day bus in arrangement. In Southampton, this was necessary simply because of a low bridge, the Bargate Arch, which meant that all the cars had to be designed as very low bridge cars. Under this arch, the trolley wire actually passed within 4 feet of the top of the car, and under this arch it was quite possible to electrocute yourself simply by touching it.
What sort of current would it be carrying?
Well, this was at 600 volts DC, a completely lethal voltage, especially if wet. But there was what was considered adequate protection against any passenger doing that. That is a notice on both ends of the car instructing you not to do so and to remain seated.
I see, and the power came in down here?
The power came in down here.
To the motors?
Yes, were you to touch this and the overhead line, this would be enough. Now, this body shape is characteristic of most tramways of the early period. It was introduced basically as a follow-on from the horse stagecoach, where the body required to be swept in to accommodate the very large wheels. When the horse and subsequently electric tram car was introduced, there was no real need to follow it, yet designers seemed somehow to like the elegant shape that this produced, and as such the tumble home, since it is called, was perpetuated right through to about 1930. Now, this is an 8-wheel car. That is, it has 4 axles each, 2 on each truck, and each truck has similar equipment: a motor, a brake linkage, and devices like the sand, which is ejected down onto the front of the wheels in order that in wet weather the car can get better adhesion. And finally you've got a lifeguard which in the event of anybody being on the floor in front of the tram is automatically tripped and scoops you up. Coupled to this, you've got some real estate as well. This is a typical example of the pride which tramway operators took in their vehicles and the art of the coach builder in producing something which was worth looking at as well as just riding in. You've got the ornate bird's eye ceiling, lined out in gold leaf, ornamental brass chandeliers, anything which would improve the appearance of the vehicle. Each tramway had its own coat of arms or crest, and this is an example of a Paisley crest which we've had to hand paint since Paisley was taken over by Glasgow in 1921, and as such the originals were totally obsolete and unobtainable.
Trams, with their exotic crests and liveries, not only exemplified the civic pride of Britain's new industrial cities, but were a major factor in making large-scale suburban life a reality. The tram made possible for the first time the mass movement of people from where they lived to a distant place of work, a football match or a music hall. Designed around the tram, the pre-motor car city achieved a sort of equilibrium based on a transport system, something which it has never since enjoyed. All that trams added to the atmosphere was a rather likeable sound. Besides the vehicles themselves, the tramway demanded track and overhead equipment, often of great complexity. These ingenious trolley reversers, a feature of the Sheffield system, simplified the work of the conductor. All this hardware had to be maintained, and the cost of this work, coupled with the inflexibility of trams in crowded city centres, contributed to their complete extinction by the early 1960s. The tram is essentially to do with people, noise and activity. Without this atmosphere of thronging crowds and a track for it to run on, the tram is as incongruous as a fish out of water.
There was always a very special quality about trams, which was so much more than just the machines themselves. This can now only be found here at Crich.